Hi everybody, my name is Simone Walker and I'm one of the Deputy Secretaries here at the Department of Communities and Justice.
And I'm Joanna Quilty. I'm the CEO of the New South Wales Council of Social Service.
So thanks for joining Joanna and I on one of our videos to talk about the impacts of COVID-19.
So Simone, I'm going to start with a really practical question to do with the 1,400 or so contracts that are currently being renegotiated. How are they actually going to be physically signed, given that we're all working remotely?
That's right, Joanna. We've all been working out of our offices and the teams have previously been working really hard to adopt electronic signatures for the Human Services Agreement. So since the 11th of May, we've been using a product called DocuSign for service providers. And the great thing about this product is it's incredibly easy to use. Service providers won't need to download software, which is a great thing, or set up an app or an account. It's just getting them to access DocuSign as they sign a new contract.
So will there be any formal training provided in how to use DocuSign?
It's actually a really easy process, and some of your members might already find that they know it from signing details with the banks. It won't require specialised training, but now service providers should receive an email explaining what DocuSign is and how to go about using it. The one thing that's going to be really important with DocuSign is to make sure that we get the right person inside each of the organisations to have access to that email. So if you're not sure if you received the email or if you're not sure that it's gone to the right person in your agency, then it'd be great to get in touch with your contract manager, because we always know it's about the right person getting the right information to be able to make this sort of thing happen. We're really keen for feedback. If people find it great, awesome. Also, if people have some issues, we'd be keen to hear that as well.
So my next question relates to technology, which there are still some concerns about in terms of services having access to technology, but also vulnerable families. The first issue is that even if services have money to purchase technology, it seems it's really hard to come by the equipment at the moment. And then the second issue is that we know DCJ have been targeting families 0 to 5. Department of Education has been targeting students in the higher years, but then there's a whole range of vulnerable families in the middle who are missing out. So I'm wondering if you can give us an update there.
I think that's a really great point. We know that the technology is needed and needed as soon as we can get it out there to people so that they can connect with their family, that they can connect with their services. As I've mentioned previously, we've had a program where people can register for access to technology for some items that either we've purchased or that have been donated. And so we received 6,000 applications through that, which is a real indication to us of the need that is out there. So we've got a panel together that comprises of the Acting Advocate for Children and Young People, Zoe Robinson, as well as DCJ representatives, so that we can get the right people, the right technology to the right people and have a good process behind that. Again, that was round 1, and we know that we will be prioritising people because we won't be able to service all 6,000 certainly in this round. So again, we want to make sure that education comes to the party where it can. But I think it's been a real indicator to us about the level of need out there. I think you make a really good point about access as well. I know that some stores, even at a retail level, haven't been taking orders for a number of things, but I think that that's changing, and I guess I'd really encourage our service providers. We think this is a good use of your dollars in this financial year, just to emphasise that. But it's something we're going to keep monitoring because we know that it's key, firstly, to getting the information out there, but also the future of the way that we want to work.
So Simone, I know we've talked previously about the need for a plan to ensure that we have a robust, effective service system that can support vulnerable families and individuals, that can meet demand and that can withstand future shocks. The pressing issue of financial sustainability for organisations is becoming more apparent. For those organisations that have depended on a diversity of funding sources and where those funding sources are starting to dry up, those organisations are facing a very uncertain future. And at the same time, we've got rising demand in the community. We know some of it's being kept at bay by Job Seeker, just as the Job Keeper initiatives are helping to prop organisations up. But I'm wondering if DCJ and NCOSS can do a joint piece of work that is going to look at what the rising demand in our community is, what the impacts of that is going to be on the service system, the changing nature of that demand, and how we can ensure that we are going to be best placed to meet it.
I think that's a great idea, and I'm really open to that conversation. I know that you're doing economic modelling, and we've got modelling that we're looking at, as well as the work from Treasury. It'd be great to bring those pieces together. I think making sure that we can adapt into the future, because I have questions about whether our client groups will change over time as well. It would be great to input that piece of work too. So I think that's something that we can do through our co-commissioning opportunities.
So Simone, this again relates to that longer term planning. We know that $34 million has gone into ensuring that people who would otherwise be sleeping rough or in other inadequate circumstances have been able to be housed in the short term in temporary arrangements, which is great. But what is the long term plan for those people? When you know, that temporary accommodation comes to an end, how are we going to find them permanent, safe houses to live in when we know that our social housing system is at capacity?
It's a really good point, and it's I think it's good to split out the $34 million into what it is. So we've got $14.32 million for emergency accommodation. But on top of that, we have over 20 million for rental subsidies. So this is to support people who are experiencing a financially destabilising event, which many of those people that are being housed through emergency accommodation, that is their experience, or for households impacted by domestic and family violence. And we think that that will help us translate the great work that's been done about getting people into temporary accommodation into long-term sustainable housing, because that's what we want to see out of this. We don't want to see people returning to the streets. There is a new Rent Choice Assist COVID-19 policy that's just been released, and I think that people will find the link to that running below our conversation right now. So as part of this push to make sure that we accommodate people more permanently out of the temporary accommodation that they're in now, there is a task force that's been set up in central Sydney that has DCJ on it, New South Wales Health, local government, and a whole range of our specialist homelessness service providers, because that's the group that really needs to work together. We know a lot of these people have significant health concerns, and we have to address that as it goes. So the idea is for this group to really know and understand what the housing exits are for this group, and we're working through the group that is emergency accommodation to assess them about what their best accommodation supports will be, so that we can get them into some sustainable housing. So there's work underway, but it is absolutely the next biggest challenge for us.
So Simone, I know a lot of work has gone into ensuring that DCJ is a single cohesive department that speaks with one voice to all of its funded NGOs. But we've got the situation where NGOs that were funded under FACS have received written guarantees about SACS ERO payments into the future, whereas those that are funded under the justice side of the department haven't received those assurances. How can we make sure that all NGOs are given the assurances they need about the future, particularly at a time when we're facing so much uncertainty?
Thanks for raising this, Joanna, because certainly SACS ERO is one of those issues that I know people get very concerned about. So we are making good progress towards aligning all of the DCJ funded programs, but there are some programs that are not funded through the same arrangements. I'm thinking about some of the services that may be funded, for example, through legal aid. So historically, there has been differences in the way that Justice and FACS have determined funding levels. But I want to say categorically that for those NGOs that have been directly contracted by DCJ, firstly, the 2021, there'll be no change to the existing ERO payment process across the DCJ program. So that's good to be really clear about this stage of this time of uncertainty. From 2021 to 22, the SACS ERO pay escalations will end. So that means that the SHADS award rates, with the 10 years of SACS ERO included, will apply for all employees under that award. And so DCJ will be doing work with Faxia, who are our internal modelling and insights group, and Treasury to build that new rate into the contract and the program baselines. And you may have been able to tell that I was reading some of that because I want to get the language absolutely right around this information for people, because I think it's really important. So in previous discussions, we've talked about the DCJ dashboard, which we try to publish each week. And I just want to take a minute to look at the example of some of the data that we look at, because I think this is really interesting for people. So you can see that we track ROSH reports all the time, but the data's been really interesting during the COVID-19 period. It's not surprising that the number of reports from education has dropped off, because kids haven't been at school, and we know that education, as one of our mandatory reporters, are an incredible eye on the child. But if you look at the light blue line, that's ROSH reports from NGOs, and it's been steady with a bit of a drop in late March. But then I could see there's a real uplift and an upward trend in the reports from NGOs. And my guess about that is that when you all quickly really shifted your models to work different ways of working, that's where we see that uplift, because again, you were engaged with families and able to check in on children and their families. That's really encouraging to see. Of course, not that there's more ROSH reports, but that as a class of reporter, NGOs have adapted incredibly well. And a huge thank you for that. So thanks everyone for joining Joanna and myself. Again, we really welcome your feedback and your questions, and hopefully we've covered some areas of interest for you today.